I have failed you all on something. And it's great that we're going to talk about this now and for some time within the context of the subject it relates to. That was such a vague sentence. You'll see. But I'm so mad that for so long I haven't added this little detail to our discussions of that topic. First, let me play for you a clip from an interview of Donald Trump failing miserably to the point where the interviewer has to cut him off to answer a policy question, a theme that we've been following for some time now, where he gets asked about something, he says a bunch of words, and you're sort of thinking, okay, I guess I can guess what you meant by that, but that was bizarre. And then the interviewer either goes, yes, that was awesome, because they're super MAGA, or they're sort of MAGA, because that's the only interviews Trump seems to do these days, but they'll still try to go, well, did you mean this or that, or what's going on? And then after this, I'm going to show you some reporting that makes what Trump has been saying for years now so insane. We watched this clip before with Cheryl Atkinson in this interview. Take a look.
Opportunity economy. What are the specific mechanics of how prices come down? You know, the steps that would be taken in a second term for you?
So, first of all, she can't do an interview. She could never.
By the way, again, just hold on to the question as he talks, and then I'll read you the transcript. Then we'll go further. And while you're watching this clip, this is the real reason why I paused. I would really appreciate you clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already. Millions of people watch the show each week who aren't subscribed. Come on now. Easy, free, and simple.
What are the specific mechanics of how prices come down? You know, the steps that would be taken in a second term for you?
So, first of all, she can't do an interview. She could never do this interview because you ask questions like, give me a specific answer. She talks about her lawn when she was growing up. This woman is not equipped to be president. She's not equipped to deal with President Xi, who I took in hundreds of billions of dollars with him, and Putin. We had no war with Putin. Remember, and I'm just going to go off just for this, with Bush, they took a lot, Russia. With Biden, they're trying to take everything. With Obama, they took a lot. With Trump, Russia took nothing. Just remember that. You know, it's a little chart. But what happened, and when you look at what took place, was so sad. When they took over, they cut the oil way down, and oil started going through the roof. It was going to go to $10 a gallon. It was going to go to numbers that nobody's ever seen. And so they went back to the Trump drilling. They said, let it go back. That was the only good thing, but they stopped. Because I would be there, but 4 years later, I would be triple what the number was. Right now, they're just about even where I was. But they only did that because of the fact that they eventually have an election coming up. And you remember at the beginning what happened. That's one of the reasons that Putin went in, because it went to $100 a barrel instead of $40 a barrel. And he could fight all the wars he wants with those kind of numbers because he's a big seller of oil and gas. So what happens is they went back to what I was doing, just said, just reopen. It wasn't hard. It's so crazy what they want to do. They're going to destroy lives. They're going to destroy what they have done to this country, and especially in the sense of allowing millions and millions of people come in, because that's something, you know, we can fix the gasoline situation and we can fix the anything.
Do prices come down magically because it's not them?
They come down with energy and they come down with interest rates.
Okay, so you saw, and then Cheryl Atkinson goes, oh my gosh, so do they magically come down? And then he gives you two examples. One he doesn't have direct control over, but or I guess both, he doesn't have direct control over, but hold on to him saying gasoline, energy more generally. That's at the core to him of all of our inflationary problems that we dealt with before. And we've already contextualized that with, well, but look at how the pandemic and his mismanaging of it, this, that. We've gone through that. But hold on to that in your mind. First, though, because y'all know I've started to really like doing this. Let me read what he said back to you. What are the specific mechanics of how prices come down? The steps that would be taken in a second term for you. First of all, she can never do the interview because you ask questions, like give me a specific answer. She talks about it a lot when she was growing up. This woman's not equipped to be president, and she's not equipped to deal with the President Xi and Putin, and we had no war with Putin. I'm going to go off of this. With Bush, they took a lot. In Russia, with Biden, they're trying to take everything. I don't want to do this whole thing again, but those little transcripts, the child cancer, this one and others, we're going to do something, turning this transcript where he's saying all these words. There's a point there, and you can derive it sometimes, but it's so jumbled. And we're going to put it into ChatGPT and say, make this make more sense. And then I'm going to read that version of what Trump in text form sounds like if he didn't have such difficulty speaking. That's for the bonus show. Click the join button to get it. But interestingly enough, on Trump's major point, he has the border. We've addressed that a gazillion times. And then he has prices, right? And what does he say about prices? Every time prices comes up, that whole little rant was about energy. They turned off his energy policy, he says, then they turned it back on, but that was too late because everything had been ruined. And I always say, right now, energy production's at record highs. His wording there was so vague, but what he was trying to say was, sure, we're currently producing more energy than any time in the history of the world, including more oil production domestically than the history of the world under Biden-Harris, but somehow I would have been 4 times that. I won't specify how, but I would have. But look at a different point that Mark Cuban made, and they'll substantiate it with reporting from the time.
So there was a point in time, because I was just reading about this, in 2020, right as the pandemic was starting. Yeah. And because there was a lot of the demand for oil and gas was falling, Russia and Saudi Arabia got into a price war on oil. And the price of gas just plummeted. Yeah. And a bunch of the people in the oil industry went to Donald Trump and said, you know MBS at Saudi Arabia, you know Putin, for better or worse, get them together.
And let's make this.
And let's reduce production so the price of oil goes up. Yeah. Now, here's the bargain. Do you save the oil companies, or do you save all the people who are suffering from the pandemic and want to pay less for gas?
Yeah.
And so when you people. And if you track it, the reduction in
and they're showing graphics on screen, I'll just describe for our podcast listeners, illustrating the very phenomenon that he's talking about. After this deal was made and once it went into effect, the production got cut. Demand had collapsed because everyone was stuck in their homes. That makes sense. But production, boosh, hit the floor too. In part because of a deal that Trump facilitated. That then, when demand shot back up as the economy reopened, the production wasn't matching it, which spiked prices perfectly in time for Biden-Harris to be blamed for it.
Production of oil, they pulled back so much so that the price went up. And then over time, over the following 2 years, so that was from early 2020 to late 2022, they increased production. And when you increase production, the price of gas goes back down some. Yeah. So when they were reducing production, the price of gas went like this. And that was the start of inflation. Because just like he says all the time, drill, because that'll reduce the prices of everything else. Yeah. Well, he literally caused the prices of everything else to start going up. So by the time he left,
the price of oil is expensive. The shipping is more expensive.
Everything is
it's
more
trickle down effect from oil.
Right.
I don't know how this was in my brain somewhere, because once I saw that clip, I went, oh yeah. But I haven't been shouting this at all of you. How? Again, I failed you. I'm sorry. Every time the argument for MAGA about we shouldn't re-elect or we shouldn't elect Kamala Harris because of gas prices, especially when they were at their worst, because of oil production, even though it's back to record highs, not back to, it's at record highs, and inflation, while there's a bunch of factors, and we've given hours to those, talking about just globally the supply chain problems that contributed to the inflation globally, that we brought down faster than our comparable countries, the spending that was necessary to get out of such a crisis, as happens every time you see this sort of recession, often that's the way you get out of it, relief spending, contributed to inflation. But more of that was done under Trump and then impacted into, of course, Biden-Harris, because that's how time works. And then corporate price gouging. They took advantage of the moment. Everyone's expecting prices to go up, so let's jack it up more than we actually have to. And that's the broader global picture. But here specifically, you saw the headlines during that video, but the Washington Post reports what Trump promised. That's actually not what I meant to read, and said this. Trump tells CNBC he spoke to Putin, MBS, and expects Saudis, Russia to announce 10 million barrel cut. Politico, Trump calls on Russia and Saudi Arabia to cut oil production. The Trump administration is pressing OPEC to hold an emergency meeting as early as next week to try to end the standoff in the oil market that has threatened to cripple the U.S. oil industry. 3 industry and government officials familiar with the talks said. You saw this particular one special report. Trump told Saudi cut oil supply or lose U.S. military support. You rarely see Trump work that aggressively for something. And the effort illustrated, as this piece writes, Trump's strong desire to protect the U.S. oil industry from a historic price meltdown as governments shut down economies worldwide to fight the virus. It also reflected a telling reversals of Trump's long-standing criticism of the oil cartel, which he has blasted for raising energy costs for Americans with supply cuts that usually lead to higher gasoline prices. But here's the deal. Now, Trump was asking OPEC to slash output is the end of that paragraph that's key. This was an unprecedented production cut, an unprecedented crisis and demand collapse that we were seeing as well. And so we would have to have a whole different nuanced discussion to give the proper time to what the best approach, and likely some cuts in production were necessary given the oil industry, energy industries more broadly, not being something you want to see completely collapse and melt down, but you also don't want to jack up prices for consumers. It's always that balance. If you don't want companies to be going out of business and you don't want to just be serving the executives in spite of the average consumer. So I'm not saying the whole concept of this in some sense was wrong, but instead that if we're casting blame, and Trump spends every single day saying that it's Biden who cut energy production, specifically oil production. You know he's being dishonest because in this exact moment he participated in the thing that caused the spike in prices into Biden's administration. Think about that. I've spent hours on this show discussing the talking points and trying to add context and say, listen, if you want to have some blame for the people in power, I understand, but can we look at this in the view of a global crisis and how we're handling it next to the people that... But this was left out of it. And this falls into the things that were done during a global crisis. I have a lot of sympathy for leaders governing through a crisis. Because it's tough when we are hit with this unprecedented public health debacle. But Trump uses and exploits the impact of that very crisis to attack Biden-Harris every single day. Trump was dumping money into the economy as he left office that then contributed to inflation that then he blames Biden-Harris for. Trump was making deals like this. Trump was mismanaging the economic crisis. Trump was mismanaging the supply chain problems, all leading to a huge spike in inflation that we predicted and could have predicted going into Biden-Harris, that then he blames them for. And it's stunning that regardless of the facts that are out there, just because it's simpler, people will go vote for Trump on this very issue. I don't know what to do about that. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show by clicking that join button below.